Russia presents itself as the only negotiable partner here. It completely ignores Ukraine and it tries to somehow make Africans do the same.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euroatlantic Course. My name is Anton Pechenkin and today we'll talk about Africa between the threat of hunger and Russian soft power. If you want to know more, please subscribe to our channel to stay tuned and support us with your like and commentaries. We read attentively every one of them. This week, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov had a big tour over Africa, visiting Egypt, Ethiopia, Uganda and Congo. In his article, published just before the visits, Lavrov announced this trip will mark Russia's pretending to be fighting against the unipolar world and assure its partners on the African continent that they won't lack Russian grain and other foods this year. This problem, a ghost of a great hunger, is the biggest consequence of Russian full-scale invasion to Ukraine, ongoing since February 24. Ukraine used to be the #1 exporter of foods to the regions of Northern and Eastern Africa, and reaching the grain deal in Istanbul with the participants of Turkey and the United Nations obviously hasn't reliably solved this problem. By now the grain prices got higher by 60% comparing to the previous year, and that doesn't seem to be the last record this summer and this year. So the whole continent became another hostage of the Kremlin. Some countries are aware of Russia's role in putting under risk the life of their millions of their citizens. 27 African countries voted for the anti-Russia resolution in the United Nations General Assembly in March, including such significant players as Kenya and Nigeria. On the other hand, 17 African countries abstained in that voting. And Russia now actively tries to use this split on the continent to strengthen its international positions amid the isolation to which it trapped because of the brutal Hitler-style invasion to Ukraine. What methods does Moscow use for that, and why that steps has at least partial success? Explains Denis Pilash, international relations expert.
Well, first of all, the question of hunger and of food supplies is existential for the African states, and it was predictable that precisely Sub-Saharan Africa and also Northern Africa and the Middle East, they will be the most vulnerable regions that will be hit by this Russian war against Ukraine and cutting off supplies from our region. So we can say that Russia was very instrumental in weaponizing not just its military arsenal and threats of nuclear war, but also weaponizing hunger. And now it uses this question to really gain influence on the African soil. However, we can say that Russia has, it lacks substantial things besides this blockade of shipment from Ukraine to propose to the African people, and neither economically nor politically it has not much some attractivity for any foreign state. However, it really uses these issues like that Africa is suffering from hunger and starvation, and this was the issue even before, prior to the Russian invasion. So, like for instance, in Ethiopia, in the region of Tigray, the war that is waged there by the government and the local rebels, it has already led to almost 500,000 people starving, and this situation it only aggravated with Russo-Ukrainian war. And at the same time, like Russia presents itself as the only negotiable partner here, it completely ignores Ukraine and it tries to somehow make Africans do the same, and even such blatant things as attacking Ukrainian port of Odessa immediately the next day after signing this agreement in Turkey about lifting the blockade on some Black Sea ports. It hasn't changed the attitude of Africans too much. So still Russia has this upper hand, and it has it because it's using some of these ideological and propaganda cliches, trying to present itself as not another imperialist and neo-colonial power, but somehow claiming that Russia is presenting the global south. That's very ironic, not just geographically, but also, like, if we, for instance, take a glance at the article that Lavrov himself had circulated just prior to this his visit. It was claiming that Russian history isn't marked by some violent, bloody crimes of colonialism. That is plain absurd, given Russia's history against peoples of Eastern Europe, Caucasus, Central Asia, Siberia, and given that Russia was one of these white European colonial empires in the 19th century.
As we see, Russia again uses its USSR heritage. Despite all the cruelty of its totalitarian regime, the Soviet Union played somewhat progressive and positive role on the African continent, helping to build modern infrastructure, supporting new African nations in spheres of education, healthcare, and so on. That's why there are some old sympathies toward Moscow on the African continent. Denis Pilash explains why now the Russian policy in Africa is absolutely opposite to the Soviet experience, purely imperialist and predatory in the worst traditions of the 19th century.
When they now claim that they are somehow pushing the world towards multipolarity, we also need to look what this multipolarity looks like. It brings no gains for the oppressed people of the global south. On the contrary, the vision of multipolarity that is pushed by Russia, by Putin's Russia, is the vision of several grand powers that have divided the world between themselves and that subjugate all other smaller and politically and militarily weaker nations and their peoples to their will. And this means that any agency is given by Kremlin only to these great powers, the US, China, probably India, maybe Brazil. But African countries are nowhere to be represented here. And we see that at the same time, like Russia, its main message, it's still conveyed for rather the Western conservatives, with this presentation of Russia as some fortress of traditional values and of some European Christian civilization. But at the same time, they also exploit this nostalgia, feeling of nostalgia for the role that the Soviet bloc played by supporting anti-colonial movements in the global south. And here we can invoke what Maxim Subh, who is Ukraine's representative on the Middle East and Africa, what he stated about that Russia tries to privatize these feelings of many people across Africa that feel gratefulness for, again, it was dictated by mostly geopolitical reasons, but still that the Soviet Union and its allies played an important role in supporting these anti-colonial movements and the newly decolonized nations. So now Russia, who is that is an imperial predator itself, it tries to build over this this sentiment, and it also exclusively and intensively uses social media to promote its agenda, to promote this pro-Russian sentiment in sub-Saharan Africa. But at the same time, we can say that the most reliable political partners for Russia and who benefits the most from Russian support in the region are probably the most oppressive and the most authoritarian regimes. like it was al-Bashir's regime in Sudan, or again we can invoke the role that was played and is played and it's going to intensify by Russian paramilitary, by the Russian private military companies, like primarily as the so-called Wagner Group, that again includes a lot of far-right white nationalists, and that has done horrible atrocities throughout many African countries. So this Russian message, it tries to shed more light on these non-existent positive sides of modern Russia, at the same time trying to keep silent about the crimes that were committed by Russia and its proxies against the peoples of Africa.
You have been watching this special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euroatlantic Course dedicated to the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine in Flames. In description there is also information how personally you can help Ukraine in our fight against Russian aggression, and if you find our job interesting and useful, please like and share this video. Thank you for watching, and everything will gonna be Ukraine.